In this video, we're going to be reviewing adding and subtracting algebraic expressions. Now, this section is probably the largest section out of chapter 1, but a lot of this I think you already remember, so we're just going to review it. So first, a polynomial, or in general, an algebraic expression, contains 1. Variable terms, 2. Constant terms, and 3. Math operations. Now, notice how I left the space there. Please leave a space. So, variable term, something like 3x. Now, remember, the 3 is called a coefficient, all right? Another variable term could be something like only the letter z, something like that. Constant terms are strictly numbers, like -1/2 or 7. And then the math operations, add, subtract, multiply, and divide. Now, for this section, we focus on the first two. So what happens when we have variable terms, constant terms, and math operations? We create what we call a polynomial. For example, the first type of polynomial we can have is something like 3 times x to the 4th power. Now this polynomial, notice it has a variable term. It has math operations 3 times x to the 4th. So it fits the polynomial or algebraic expression. But this is called a monomial. And the reason why it's called a monomial, it has one term. Okay? Now, let's say I had a variable term like 4x to the 5th plus 2, a constant term. Well, this is still a polynomial. It just has a very special name. This is called a binomial because we have 2 terms. So just remember, I'm going to use a nice color here. We'll use purple. Terms are separated by plus or minus signs. All right, so terms are separated by plus or minus signs. So this third example, x to the 2nd plus 7x plus 3. Well, that is a trinomial because we have 3 terms. And underneath, I'm going to label the terms. Here's our first term, second term, third term. And notice that they are separated by 2 plus signs. All right? So that is one way that we can identify polynomials based off the number of terms they have. Any polynomial with 4 or more terms, we simply call a polynomial. So the only 3 that you're going to be responsible for identifying are monomials, binomials, and trinomials. All right, that's just one way that we classify polynomials. Now, if we looked at x to the 2nd plus 7x plus 3. Okay, we know this is a trinomial, but this is what we call a second degree trinomial. Now, what makes it second degree is the highest exponent. All right. So we have two types of degrees. We have the degree of a term. All right, now be very careful. This is the degree of a term. And this is the sum of the exponents on the variables. All right? So for example, 2 times x to the 4th times y is a 5th degree term. And the reason? You have x to the 4th, but then you also have y to the 1st. And when you add 4 plus 1, you get 5. So that's a 5th degree term. Okay? How about 7? Well, this would be a 0 degree term because there are no exponents. So it's a 0 degree term. In fact, all constants or all constant terms have a degree of 0. Okay? Now, the second thing you have is the degree of the polynomial. Now, the degree of the polynomial is the highest degree of its terms. All right? So like I said, x to the 2nd plus 7x plus 3. If you go from left to right, we have a 2nd degree term, we have a 1st degree term, and then we have a 0 degree term. So the highest degree of its terms is right here. So this is a 2nd degree polynomial. All right. Likewise, if you had something like xy plus 1/2 x to the 5th y to the 8th minus pi x to the 10th, this would be, well, let's go from left to right. 2nd degree term. 8 plus 5 is 13, so that's a 13th degree term. And finally, pi is a number, so that doesn't mean anything. 10th degree term. So this is a 13th degree polynomial. All right? So hopefully this is like ringing a bell for us. Now, we're going to focus on adding or subtracting polynomials. All right? And the way to do this is we have to remember how to combine like terms. All right? And there are two, I guess, checks that we need to make. First check, you better have the same variable or variables. And the second check, and this is the one that I think sometimes we forget, you also have to have the same exponent or exponents. So for example, if we wanted to simplify x to the 2nd minus 4x to the 2nd, notice that we are combining the same variable and the same exponents. So remember, in front of that x to the second, there's really a 1 here. And these terms are the same. So the only thing you really got to focus on, what's 1 minus 4? Well, 1 minus 4 is negative 3 x to the second. And that is how we add or subtract polynomials. It is that simple. Okay? So let's try another one here. How about 3x plus 5y plus 2x? Well, in this scenario, we're looking for same variable, same exponent. So I have 3x. I have plus 2x. So I know those are the same terms. So I'm going to combine them. 3 plus 2 is 5. And there's nothing I can do with that 5y because it's a different variable. So it's just 5x plus 5y. And that's it. All right. Now, sometimes they can get a little bit more complicated. All right. But you just fall back on your algebra. So we could have something like this. 16 times the quantity, 8 minus x, minus 2 times the quantity, 8x minus x squared, minus 64, minus the quantity of 64, minus 16x plus x squared. All right? Well, remember, fall back on your algebra skills. First thing we notice, we see parentheses. How do we remove parentheses? Hopefully you're sitting there in your seat going, well, you got to distribute. So I'm going to go ahead and distribute. So 16 times 8, that is 128, minus 16x. And I will do this, distribute the entire way for the entire expression. So keeping going, minus 16x plus 2x to the second, minus 64 plus 16x minus x squared. Now, I have the advantage. I have highlighters at my disposal, and that really helps when you're doing this. So I'm going to highlight all my like terms. So the first thing I notice, just going from left to right, I have 128. I have minus 64. Those are constant terms, so I'm going to combine them. If you want, you can go ahead and rewrite them right next to each other. Now, the next thing I'm going to look for are going to be x to the first terms. So, negative 16x to the first, minus 16x to the first, plus 16x to the first. So they are all like terms. And finally, I have plus 2x to the second and minus 1x to the second. So now going from left to right, I can go ahead and combine all my like terms. 128 minus 64 is 64. Negative 16x minus 16x plus 16x is negative 16x. And 2x to the second minus 1x to the second is positive x to the second. Now, this is 100% correct. However, we like to write our polynomials in descending degree. All right, so technically, your math teacher, meaning me, would like to see this as x to the second minus 16x plus 64. We like that descending degree to come into play. All right, and that is going to be it for this video. So please be careful when you're adding, subtracting. Remember, you're looking for same variable, same exponents, and that is called combining like terms.